Are you ready to get infinite edge against your toughest opponents in a spot that they've never studied? It will take a significant amount of time for them to improve, while you will just ace it consistently? This video prepares you for ultimate 3-way post-flop glory and domination with the rise of the new GTO Wizard AI 3-way solver. Stay tuned to find out how you can dominate your opposition, stop leaking big blind per 100, and make the right play every single time. Hello and welcome to 3-Way Cash, Importance, and Heuristics. I'm Scrimitzu. I've been playing online poker for 15 years. This is my first video for GTO Wizard, so I hope you like it and you learn something. In this video, we're going to talk about the importance of studying three-handed pots in cash games and how GTO Wizard AI has revolutionized 3-way solving. We're going to talk about how to look at 3-way versus heads-up pots and general heuristics and how to approach studying. Up to this point, multi-way pots were the Wild West. Everybody played on intuition until a solver that was called Simple 3-Way came out, but that really lacked in interface and hyper lacked in speed of solving. You would need a beast of a computer, a server, a terabyte RAM machine to solve 3-way with multiple bet sizes for each street, leads, stuff like that. Then came Rocket Solver, which had really good bucketing system, has a great interface, but still lacks the solving speed. Now, GTO Wizard AI 3-way solving is available, and compared to other solvers that take hours or even days to solve, it can solve 3-way sims in less than a minute. And this is completely revolutionary because it offers you the study privileges of comparison, data collection, aggregate reports, self-aggregate reports, simplifying everything, node locking, everything that you might want from a 3-way solver. If you put in 20 hours into 3-way solving and studying 3-way sims, and your opponents have 0, your edge is absolutely massive in this pot. It could even be up to 30 blinds per 100 hands. In time, this edge will diminish, but right now, if you put in just 20 hours into it, you will be way ahead of the opposition, and this will generate a really high win rate for you in this spot. So then you can ask me, what if I put in 80 hours? Yes, you can put in 80 hours into this subject. You can put in 200 hours in the subject, but then there is a law of diminishing returns. The more you put into something, the less you gain out of it. The more you put into this 3-way subject, the less you gain out. So if you have 20 hours ahead of your opponents, your win rate will be maximal. So where does edge really come from? You playing closer than your opponents to theory. That is clear, proven edge. You understanding theory better after those 20 hours will facilitate that. And then exploits come from knowing where players deviate and just adjusting to their deviations to max counter them. So if you know theory, if you put in those 20 hours, you will know how spots work. Your opponent's mistakes will be really apparent, so you'll figure them out. And compared to that spot, you can either node lock and figure out the exploits in a solver or just counter them directly by intuition. Now, how do you use these 20 hours efficiently? You work really smart. You create your own aggregate reports on flop subsets, not on all flops, not on 200 flops, on 25 or 49 flop subset that I'll show you in a second. You draw conclusions, you extract heuristics from that, you figure out how the strategy plays, and then you understand what the strategy is behind the numbers, how it actually works. So let me give you a visual representation on how your edge might look like, right? So before we had boomer solvers, only one size per street max. And now we have GTO Wizard AI, and you will have 20 hours, which is 20 more than about 95% of your opponents in the next 3 months at least, but it might be way longer. So if you can look at this chart, at the bottom, you'll see months, 0 to 12. So now to in a year, right? And your edge in this specific spot. So your edge in big blind per 100 in 3-way SRP or in general 3-way. So in your first month, you'll maybe put in 10 hours, maybe you can put in more, right? And you'll get to 10 BB per 100 edge in this spot on your opponents. And I'm actually being not that generous with this win rate. You might have a way larger win rate in this spot based on the opponents that you're playing against. Second month, you might get to 20 blinds per 100. And then in time, even though you're still putting in study time, your opponents might catch up, right? So there is the law of diminishing returns, where essentially you put in 20 hours and then you keep putting in hours. But if your opponent puts 20 hours and you put 40 or 60 or even 80, your edge will diminish. It won't triple or quadruple. You will find less and less discoveries compared to your opponents that will boost their game just like you in the first 20 hours maximally, right? So this is your edge. Get it fast, get it quick, get it while it's hot, right? Do your own very small subset aggregate reports, figure out how the spot works, and then just destroy them. This guy, even though he probably didn't play poker, or maybe he did, but he would have been an awesome player, was a world chess champion. Mikhail Tal was one of the most brutally styled chess players. But one of the coolest things was that he admitted my favorite quote of all time, which is, "You must take your opponent into a deep dark forest where 2 + 2 = 5, and the path leading out is only wide enough for one." So what do I mean by this slide? What do I mean by this quote? Means that until now, maybe you were a little bit afraid and to go into call mode because you would go multi-way and you would avoid that particular spot. And having studied 3-bet only strategies and how 3-bet pots work, you just do way better than that. But the problem is that 3-bet pots are way easier to study, especially for in position, but also for the out of position. So out of positions are way better, right? So the guys who you 3-bet are just way better right now at defending than they were like a few years ago. But guys 3-way still lack a lot of knowledge and a lot of confidence in their game. So by studying 3-way poker, by studying, doing your aggregator boards, by doing everything that you need to do to become a better player in the spot, by gaining that edge, you will have a larger edge in 3-way, right, than in 3-bet pots. So you might be more confident in learning mixed strategies. We might be more confident in calling that ace-10 suited on the button against hijack, or when, especially when he opens 2x, instead of, just 3-betting and getting denied a ton of equity when you get 4-bet. So what we're going to do now is get into a post-flop spot. We're going to build proper tree parameters. I'm going to show you how to build a proper tree in 3-way. Afterwards, we're going to simplify the solution for better accuracy and also to understand it easier, collect the data, and look into it for heuristics. And then we can understand the heuristics from a strategic standpoint. All right, so let's go deep into the solver and make you a proper 3-way sim. You got to go into custom solutions, press new solution. And first of all, we have to complete the ranges. Use the pre-fill option and click on custom. This, to me, I haven't figured it out, how to create a 3-way sim. But there's an easier way. You go to custom, and then you basically just input the action. So you choose UTG, open, button call, and then big blind will come along. And boom, you have your 3-way sim. Click on confirm, and you have the ranges input, the rake percentage, and the pot size, chip EV, everything is in order. Now you have to put in bet sizes, and the easiest way, in 3-way it's easier than heads up, honestly, you just put in as many bet sizes as you want, not a lot because the tree might just fail outright, but 4 bet sizes and really spaced from each other. So you want 25, 50, 75, and 125 for the flop. Then choose apply the same settings as big blind everywhere, right? So button will be the same, UTG will be the same. I would suggest 2 raise sizes, 25 and 75, so that they're really spaced out from each other, and a re-raise size of another 75. On the turn and on the river, it's okay to just press this and apply them on the turn and on the river, the same sizes. But if you go to the river, disable this option for the big blind, add 1 extra size, which is bigger, which is a 250. The size will be automatically added since you're using the same settings as the big blind in both positions, but just on the river. So you'll be fine. Don't worry. You'll be fine on the turn. This will be saved on the river. Please remember to save your tree. Give it a very descriptive name. SRP 3-way UTG2BB, right? Or capitals, button call, and big blind call. Make sure to save it, and you're good to go so that you never have to go through this process ever again, which it wasn't really that painful, but it's fine. Create solution and choose your first flop. This will take slightly longer than in a heads-up sim because a 3-way is computationally a lot more complex than a heads-up sim. but maybe you can find something to do meanwhile. It won't take, I'm just kidding, it won't take more than usually 40 seconds. GTO Wizard will sometimes remember the trees that you have already built and solved and will actually load them instantly, which I think is a really cool feature. Big Blind will check, and now we want to simplify the tree. So we see that Big Blind is not really leading, everything is checked. We want to remove all these options, so you have two options. Either you go into node lock and you just lock everything, but my favorite, when there are options that don't actually get used at all, just remove them by pressing this edit button right here. Just remove them by pressing X in each one and just leaving the check. That's it. So we're going to resolve the tree now. Now that we've resolved the tree, Big Blind will check and we'll get to the next position, the UTG. We'll see that UTG likes to use the B25, so 25% pot for about 52% of times and not much of anything else. Now what we'll do is remove these options and just leave the bet 25 as it is, and it will resolve the tree with these only two options, check and bet 25. So the third position that we want to simplify is now the button when UTG checks to. So when Big Blind checks and UTG checks, we want to look at button. Button has two sizes here that he uses. Usually, the most frequent size that gets used, that's the one that we can simplify to. But there is a way to figure this out completely. So, number one, what you want to do is actually lock the previous positions completely. We don't need to lock Big Blind because he just has one option. But we do need to lock UTG because if we change Button's strategy and his possibilities, UTG might change his strategy also. So we are going to lock UTG by just pressing the node lock button and then this lock icon right here, and then press apply. Now UTG is locked and the sim is resolving. Once the sim has resolved, you press check on UTG, and then our job is to leave button with check and the bet size that we want to simplify to. The two bet sizes that we would like to simplify to are B50 and B25. So we're going to leave check and B25, and then we're going to leave check and B50. The sim will be solving, and then we will look at button's EV at the root node. So please remember this. Whenever checking EV, do not check it here. So you have to go to ranges and look at button's EV, right? It's right here, 259. But you don't want to look at it here. You always check for the EV of a strategy at the root node. So button's EV at the root node will be 228. Now, what we want to do is change this 25% size to a 50% size and resolve it. We will remember the button's root EV, which was 228, and then look at it, and now it's 229. I think now it's obvious that the button's preferred size is B50, and we're going to record this. We do all this simplification work manually because the options of automatic or dynamic sizing are not available yet, but they will be available soon. So until then, we're just going to do our own simplifications. We're just going to do our own small aggregate report from which we can draw heuristics that will put us ahead of our competition. So this is great because you're doing it ahead of your opponents, and this will translate directly into edge. Now we can look at the reactions. So when UTG bets, then button will raise quite a bit, about 30% of times, call only 25. So button is actually raising with the 75 too, about 35% of the times, calling 25% and folding about 40%. Now when button folds, Big Blind will fold about 55, call about 45, and not really raise very often. This has been a complete high theme during my personal aggregate reports in three-way. So Big Blind doesn't really raise very, very often, also because UTG's betting range is really, really strong. When button calls, Big Blind will be coerced into folding a little bit more, about 65%, calling 30. Now it starts to raise a little bit. And when button raises, this is the most important thing, so please pay attention. This is a huge heuristic that you should really remember on ace queen 7. Surprise, Big Blind is folding 90%. So the problem here is that even though UTG is betting 1.6 blinds, a quarter of the pot, into a 6.5 blind pot, and then button is raising a quarter pot to 4 blinds, Big Blind is actually not really doing much. He's struggling extremely hard. All the top pairs are mixing, right? They're bluff catchers here. The 2 pairs are the only hands that have very, very clean calling EV. On ace queen 7, ace jack, some of it is folding and some of it just has like 1 blind. So yeah, very, very rough for the big blind to be in this spot. You have to take into consideration that on most boards, this is identical for the big blind. I've found most boards for big blind in this line to be folding somewhere between 80% and 90%. So remember, guys, whenever you're in the big blind three-way, you have a bet ahead of you that is as small as it could be and a raise that is as small as it could be, B25, raise 25, right? That big blind is folding 90% and your top pairs are bluff catchers. Now, one of the reasons of this is because if you call, UTG will actually reopen the action about 20% of times. So when you call the top pair, you will get re-raised about 20% of times. And then this becomes a pretty huge issue. So getting back to it, this is how I would record heuristics. I would record the bet size and the frequency for each position. Maybe big blind leads some boards. This is not one of them. UTG has a clear advantage on this board. I would record UTG's bet frequency. I would record Button's bet frequency and size whenever he would be checked to. And then I would record Button's reaction to UTG's bet, Big Blind's reaction to UTG's bet. And then when Button bets, Big Blind's reaction to Button's bet. And when Big Blind folds, UTG's reaction to Button's bet. I would look for outliers. I would look for the general strategy. And coming up next, I will show you exactly how one of these data sets would look like, how one of these custom aggregate reports that you make would look like, and then some conclusions that we can draw. One other piece of advice that I want to give you is not to wing it with boards. In the solutions library, if you go to any flop, it doesn't really matter. Let's say cutoff opens, big blind calls. If you go to the flop reports, you will have a subset of either 25 or 49 flops. Click on the 49 to get all the 49 flops right here. So you can use these. These are universal flop subsets that you can use to figure out strategy in each spot. So what a subset is a lower amount of flops that is as far away from each other as possible. So you will have extreme diversity within this 49 flop subset, although the total number of flops is 1,755. You can see that here, out of our 49 flop subset, which is only 3.5% of flops, the strategy actually is pretty much the same. Check is 41 over like the total sample. Check here is 38. B33 is 27.6, 29.7. So the strategy mostly retains itself pure over a 3% flop subset. So you can just choose these flops and run the three-way sim on them and draw data and draw conclusions based on that data. So, right, so this is how a data set might look like that you will extract from the three-way sims. Big blinds leading, you see that mostly XR means check range, so you can code this to be slightly smaller. UTG B25, so B25 means bet 25% of the pot, and the frequency with which he's betting when big blind checks to. When UTG also checks, Button will be 25, for example, on ace, ace 7 on this board, 40% of the times with this size. So based on this, you can also extract some reactions. Button versus UTG's B25, Big Blind versus UTG's B25, and then the reactions of Big Blind and UTG versus Button's bet size. C means call, F means fold. You don't necessarily need to put in the raise because 100 minus the call and the fold will be the raise frequency. If you want to, you can though. You may also use other softwares. I'm a boomer, so I use Notepad, but then I do feed these into something like Excel or Google Sheets to make charts and to draw heuristics. So based on this, we see that UTG, for example, mostly likes to be 25. This is also exactly the 49 flop subset that you can find in the method provided earlier. So from all this data, we can extract heuristics for the UTG. For example, UTG has bets, but on most boards that are 10 high and lower, mostly just checks range. So if you look at 10 high, so the boards are sorted by high card. On 10 high, it's clearly XR or B25, but a very, very low amount. So if you want to, you can just remember and simplify these boards to just check range. This makes it easier to remember because we don't also have the reactions of the other players when UTG bets or not. Also, another way to simplify this is on higher boards, we see that UTG mostly just B25s, just bets 25%. You can look at these and have an average frequency. And based on that, for example, on ace-high boards, UTG will be betting somewhere between 60% and 40%, except for the really, really favorable for big blind boards. So if the board is not extremely favorable for the big blind, the average bet frequency would be 50%. The better the board, the more often UTG bets. The worse the board, the less often, something like ace-9-3 rainbow. For king high, we look at it and we see about a 50% average bet frequency, also with B25, and everything that's lower. On queen, for example, on jack, it varies a bit more. For button, for example, we can extract a few more heuristics, but all in all, if you look at the solution, it goes something like this. Button on ace and king high boards likes to B50 about 40% of the times. On king low, low means 9 or lower, queen low, low, and jack low, low likes to B50 about 50% of the times on average. So the better the board for the button, the more button is going to bet, the less frequent he is going to bet, but the size remains consistent. And queen, jack, and 10 or lower, button likes to B25 about 60% of times. It's not that hard. So let's recap what you need to do. You need to build your three-way spot tree, simplify each position to one size so that it's easily retainable and strategically implementable. You need to retain and organize all your data from the 25 or the 49 flop subset so that you can have a good visualization on what's happening in each position, in each spot. And then you need to draw heuristics from the data that you have gathered and implement it to your strategy. You're going to be way ahead of your opposition, who is going to be overfiring the UTG, under-raising the button, under-folding the big blind, under-raising UTG versus a raise, and all of that compounds into your win rate, into your edge. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this introduction to three-way was the best that you could find. Really appreciate a comment below, a like on the video, and you can find me in the GTO Wizard Discord. So whenever you have a question, you have like an interesting spot or something that you want to post, I'll be there watching. All right? So thank you for watching again, and I'll see you in the next video.